Uh, Ashley and Elise, we are at the end of year one, season one of the Share Chair podcast.
It's quite the feat.
Yes, yeah.
We did it. It's crazy. And there are 50 episodes.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Once a week, sometimes more than once a week.
Plus, we did some of those midweek episodes when we had a different sort of schedule or time and that kind of thing. So, it's
job.
really a lot.
Good job. I'm proud of you.
I'm proud of you too. So, what is that? I mean, what have been your immediate? Because we wanted to bring you in to kind of pick up some steam for next year and stuff. So, what have been your immediate impressions?
Before we even asked you to join, we interviewed you because of you.
Yeah.
And then later on, with all of your amazingness, we asked you to, come on. But anyway.
I mean, my experience when you interviewed me was, nerve-wracking, and it was completely different from being on the other side of the microphone. I mean, when you're asking me questions, it's constantly, oh my goodness, what am I going to say next? But now it's, what are they going to say? This is how I would answer it, but what is their experience going to tell me? And how can I learn from that? And then what's the next step? What is the next question I'm going to ask them? When you first asked me to come on the Share Chair, my immediate reaction was, oh my gosh, yes, let's do it. This is going to be great. And I was so excited because this is something I live by. I mean, elevating empathy is just, it's a beautiful thing. I wish that everyone could see the things that we're doing. And, they have the ability to. Everyone listen to the Share Chair. But I think it's a beautiful thing that you guys have created. And I am so honored to be able to not take it over, but to become a new part of this endeavor.
We've talked a bit, all three of us, about some ideas for the future, and so you've had some ideas about, I think, some social media ideas or something. So
Twitter
you want to
pictures, So I was thinking that we could because earlier on the year we had talked with the photography class, and they took pictures of people who had been interviewed, and then we made them the little profile picture for that one episode. So we could have it where someone takes pictures once, every single episode, and then we write their piece of advice that you ask them of, or ask of them, and write it in some beautiful calligraphy or something over top of the picture, and then put it on Twitter or something. Because that's just a little piece of a very important piece of the episode.
I love how, even though they're different, they all still have that I've noticed with every single piece of advice, they're all different, but there's still that read between the lines thing where it's all about acceptance. Really, either if it's of yourself or like Mrs. Devlin just said, acceptance of like where are you going to be happy, figure that out, and then work until you can get to that. Accept that you're going to have to work to get to happiness.
But he has said, my advice is to make as much money as you possibly can. That hasn't come up yet. You know what I mean?
It's always really reflective of of just humanity, I feel like. People's advice has always been.
And that question, the way you pose it, it just makes people become poetic.
Yeah,
it's always true. So beautiful or eloquent.
That's what I try and do.
Ashley, do you have any ideas about next year? Any people we should interview? Or
I'm excited to look at it from a new perspective. I'm not a sports player. I'm not involved with sports. I'm not. I have been in the past, but I'm more involved with choir and band and the IB program, different perspectives.
Theater.
And I think I'm excited to interview people like Mrs. Kieft or I really want to interview Bill. Okay, Bill is a custodian here, and every day he walks past Mrs. Keefe's room and waves to her, and then she goes, "Hi, Bill," and then she goes, "That's my boyfriend."
I'd also interview the lunch ladies.
Yes.
I love them.
Yeah.
And I think their perspective on all of the students is really unique because some of the students are not very nice to them, and some of them are really nice to them, and I think it'd be interesting to hear. Like Mrs. Devlin just said, you can't get your feelings hurt. You can't take everything so seriously, but that'd be interesting to hear from them.
Yeah.
Elise, I went and I listened to the half episode,
episode point
point
five.
five,
We were so cute.
which we called Setting It Up with Elise, and I remember saying, so I just listened to it because in preparation for this, and and it was something like, I don't know why I'm so nervous about it, but I feel like we should do this, but I'm not sure. And you just jumped in and said, "We're doing it."
I remember saying that. She was like, Mr. Tooney, we're doing this.
It's just happening. This is happening. Started with
Yeah.
like, oh, wouldn't that be fun? And then it was like, oh, let's listen to some podcasts and see
Yeah.
how they. So, and then finally, you were the one who was like, we're doing it. Thinking of a summer series, and we are planning season 2 the next year, school year. How does it feel to be a maker?
Super, super weird. Like the process of the entire year of like when I was first editing episodes took me forever. I was so self-conscious about it. Like I was so self-conscious about deleting part like of what people said or like, is this interesting? Should I keep this in? And now I can just I just sat down and did the cross-country one in like an hour. Like I can do it now and I'm confident with it. First sort of thing I've ever done technology-wise, like talking to people. Like I paint a lot and I don't know, draw a lot, and that's sort of what I made before this. But now I'm so grateful for this, for the Share Chair podcast. Like every day I think about I'm just so thankful for it in the weirdest way. I don't know how to explain it because I guess I'm thankful for the experience of it, but just like cross country, like the confidence it's given me is insane. Just having a purpose, sort of, like coming in every single Tuesday and interviewing someone and then thinking like, okay, now I have this to edit. And I don't really see it as me making something. I guess I see it as other people giving me something or giving me the opportunity to make something.
What interviews have been, I've stuck with you?
And I always think of Ben first because he was the first one where I was like, holy shit, like I didn't know that about you, because he was one of our earliest ones and there was so much in that interview that I didn't know about him, but I've known him since I was 6 years old, and that made me really connect with our idea of the podcast, getting to know someone before, and then that's when you understand them more, and that's when bullying decreases and empathy increases. I always think of Ashley when I think of that too, because when we were interviewing you, we had a purpose, and then the purpose totally changed to another thing like mental health and stuff, and I was like, whoa, we didn't even mean to go there, but we went there and it was great. Mrs. Highhill, and her advice was pain is always temporary, or the situation you're in is always temporary, even if it's a good one. Even if you're happy, that can be temporary, so be prepared and always stay positive, just get through it. DeMonte's, I think of, and his advice, just accept, being open to everyone. It's so interesting to look back at all of the interviews and the time. And it's not even when I think of the interviews, it's not oh, this was March, that was the time that it was snowing or something. I only think of that person. I can't remember anything else of what was going on. I just think of that interview. That's why I love the podcast, because we don't give enough credit to, everyone you see is so different and unique.
Yeah, and built on experience. So whatever, yeah. And
Yeah,
so whatever.
there's a quote that I see a lot, and every time I see it, it just hits me over again. It's that every single person you see experiences this day in a different way.
J.K. Rowling said, no story lives unless someone wants to listen. And that is my motto for the podcast, because your story still lives, but when someone's listening to it, it makes it so worthwhile, so beautiful. And everybody's story is worth listening to. Every single person on the earth is worth listening to. They deserve that. That's their right as a human being.
What would be your advice for the podcast? What's the next? What's your advice for the podcast?
It's to take risks with the podcast. If there's someone who you're I don't know if this is going to be a great interview, but it might be fantastic, just ask them. It's always worthwhile, even just to get to know someone, even if it's not the best episode, which there's no really definition of what the best episode is. Just give people a voice who don't have the courage to voice their own opinion. Like, give that to someone. Give that gift to someone to let them offer their voice to the world or to our listeners that they wouldn't have gotten that opportunity without the Share Chair podcast.
Advice to you, because you're leaving and you're going to do this podcast out in the big world, and I'm gonna miss you so very much, is to live loudly.
Well, my advice to the podcast
Yeah.
is to just, we need to, together, and is keep building. So, right, like, what's the next? What else? How else can empathy be elevated?
Yeah.
And then let's do those things. So, right, we can make the podcasting stronger and better every single time, do the small steps there, but are there other components and other elements? So that would be my challenge for the summertime for the podcast, is
And
to
that's
keep
what we'll do.
improving.
Yes.
That's what we'll do.
Yeah.
Elise, we started this baby like
know.
with just an idea.
I know.
And Village Baker pretzels.
Oh my God, I'm so hungry. I'm
And I'm proud of you.
I'm proud of you too. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Share Chair. Stay tuned next week for a new episode.